Hi there, and welcome back to the channel that talks about movies, culture, and everything you could possibly care about. Today, we're going to be talking about The Killer and the Killers of the Flower Moon. So I saw this movie recently, and you may have heard of it, The Killers of the Flower Moon. It stars Leonardo DiCaprio, De Niro, all of your current Scorsese Hollywood faves. But really the person who steals the show is Lily Gladstone, the they-them BIPOC personality of the week, who completely steamrolls every Hollywood vet within this whole movie. And we're talking bringing them to the vet, spading them, and putting them down. Now the movie covers the Osage County, which was the richest community in American history, where these Native American Indians had all this land with oil on it, and every snakeskin white guy with a money sign in his eyes comes through to try to marry or take the wealth for their own. Within similar Scorsese fashion, this is a rags to riches tale. But instead of wanting to be like the bad guys, you end up actually resenting them by the end. But this movie is not without its own flaws, which I will get to within the spoilers. This movie is like an operatic runtime of 3.5 hours, which I did kind of feel like it did drag on a little bit, but also helped maybe serve into the rhythm of what this movie was all about. Although I really didn't feel like the soundtrack was there, the score was just not there. It, at worst, sounded like some iMovie garbage, and at best sounded pretty good. But the whole time I was waiting for Brendan Fraser to show up, because I knew he was in it, and I just wanted to hope for the whale too. I wanted to see some whale in this Native American tale. But he only shows up at the tail end, after we're getting the bombardment onslaught of Jesse Plemons doing his Plemiest. Oh, yeah. I'm an FBI agent, and I'm here to solve the case. Yeah. I'd really like it if you could let me do my job. Just a very milquetoast FBI agent who ends up getting the job done by the end of the day. You know, if I could come up with some similarities between these two films, aside the fact that they're both created by two heavyweight, respectable filmmaking minds, David Fincher, Martin Scorsese, is that they're actually kind of wokely problematic films in which they deal with these cancel culture topics in somewhat interesting ways. The Killer, starring Michael Fassbender, is a OCD methodical killer who walks you through his mantra of his perfect life and existence where everything actually goes wrong. And probably the most problematic takeaway is that the whole soundtrack is just done by the Smiths. And I know ever since watching 500 Days of Summer that this toxic band is one of my faves. So not only does the killer make a killing by just listening to his little downgraded iPod the whole time, bumping your favorite The Smiths tunes, but there is like a dark comedy to it all. His methodical nature kind of falls flat on its face more often than not, and things don't go well for him. But there is a comedic element of his girlfriend is in a coma, and we're listening to Girlfriend in a Coma. It's serious. As in seriously funny. Little Fincher humor. Whereas I feel like in Killers of the Flower Moon, it does kind of boil down to white man bad, but also greed is bad. And also, I'm sorry for making all these likable greedy characters. And also, as the director, I'm going to come out on stage and actually address the crowd and audience in this really cringe way that is not David Lynchian at all. I'm looking at you, that paddleboard Masonic temple scene with the Black Lodge checkered floor. It just didn't land for me. But that's not to say that there were, like, no good scenes in this film. I will say what this film does really well is in dealing with death. There is a scene where Molly in 𝓐𝓬𝓬𝓬 of the Flower Moon is dealing with the death of her mother, and there is this beautiful dreamlike scene where the mother wakes up on her deathbed and she sees her ancestors and greets them and walks with them. And it's a very quiet scene. Well, the whole movie is really quiet, which, you know, simultaneously didn't really help the fact that playing next door was the Taylor Swift concert phenomenon, which was blasting with the doors open. Talk about a colonial invasion. And at one point I had to exit the theater, shut the doors to both the Taylor Swift one and the 𝓐𝓬𝓬𝓬𝓬 of the Flower Moon. And then during my many bathroom breaks during this 5-hour epic, I saw that the doors to the T-Swift one were open, so maybe that was a threatening microaggression on my end, being the abuser. Being the Kanye fan that I am, I just couldn't handle this Taylor Swift music. Although I did peek my head in at one time to see, like, hey, what am I missing? Turns out nothing. So since these movies both deal with death, I wanted to talk about how the killer does it. So it starts off with a failed murder of this billionaire client he's supposed to be assassinating in France, where, well, let me bring it back a little bit, because this film does have, like, some interesting things to say about boredom, in the sense of, like, you know, you have to be bored to be a perfect assassin like me. You have to be able to handle boredom, long periods of... And there is, like, I guess a lot of waiting, but never in a cinematic language. In fact, the cutting is so quick in this movie that we go from day to night, you know, very quickly, or we're going from his perspective to what's happening outside, and he is observing things. And what I found to be really interesting is, like, the sound diegetically, we're hearing what he's actually listening to, which is a Smith song, and it's like a little tinny earbud when we're on him, and then we'll see what he's seeing on the streets, and it'll be loud playing music. And I thought that was really interesting because that's such a reverse expectation of normally you see a character with headphones and we're in their world. And this time it was actually like a removal of it that I found to be quite interesting. But I think that the deaths in this film just happen so dark and abruptly and almost like in a cold digital way that, like, David Fincher has sort of settled on with his, like, darker tones, more bluish stuff. And this was, like, not going to say this was the least Finched out color-wise we're dealing with, because there are still some scenes where we have him in Florida, and even though it's a sunny, like, blue sky, there's just something about it that's almost like a dark blue about it, which I found to be quite interesting. Also, going back to this whole, like, calamity about race, wokeism, and basedness, there is, like, a moment in Killers where the killer, singular, he is, like, commenting on these people in Florida because, you know, once things go around, he finds out that, like, the people who hired him are trying to kill him, so he, like, sees his lawyer and underestimates how long that torture session would last, and that, you know, blows up in his face. So then it leads him to Florida, and he's fighting these, like, big, you know, gorilla, creatined out motherfuckers. And he just is, like, making this comment about, oh, yeah, like, these type of people would really do some time in a longer penitentiary. I'm just like, Jesus, what kind of, like, 4chan killer are you? It's just like the, you know, the subtly, hintingly racist things that I feel are similarly akin to how when Steve Jobs invented FaceTime and the tagline was, "Black people are gonna love this." Or when he invented the AirPods and just said, yeah, no one will ever know if you're on a meeting listening to music or ignoring people, and black people are going to love this. That nice fellow working at your bodega shop, he's not listening to anything. He's just ignoring you. What's that? I'm listening to the bootleg Taylor Swift movie. All right, in conclusion, should you go see these movies? Yes. Even though I think that they will be on streaming soon, if you can't catch them in the theater, it's always a better experience that way. And did I not like this movie because I'm white? Well, you know, I think that this movie just had a lot to say and said it kind of meekishly and quietly. And that I felt that the whole ending of the film being on this, like, the director's gonna come out on stage and directly address the audience, just was something that, to me, felt completely flat on its face and has been done better way before. The Killer, I've thought about it more since leaving the theater, and initially I felt like I had wanted much more from it, like just some kind of spiritual element that could make me relate and connect to the film. But I feel like this movie, one thing, and it's, you know, it's hinting at this idea like, oh, we're gig workers, we can find anything we need to kill you and hack into you from Amazon. I found that there was a lot more humor in this movie. So, great comedy. I highly recommend it. And Killers of the Flower Moon? Like, I just did not feel that satisfied leaving the movie, even though there were great scenes. Molly completely kills it. I remember watching Georgia Jungle with Brandon. I remember watching The Whale, with Brandon. I remember waiting for the Brandon and the Killer Moon to show up, and I'm like, where is he? That's 3 different Brandons. My life's like the Oscars. This movie's gonna probably get a couple Oscar noms. Yeah, I don't know. There are also just much better films. Like, just go watch Past Lives. That movie's way better than, like, both of these films. And it's just like a small, intimate tale about love and past lives and yin-yang, and like Asians are in it, so I'm not racist. Leave a comment if you think I'm racist. Leave a racist comment about my ethnicity, which is I'm vampirin. I'm a vamp cowboy. Find something silly to say about that. Let's have a good laugh, like The Killer, comedy of the year. What else can I say? Go watch Twin Peaks. You know, I do YouTube. I'm a filmmaker. I'm an artist. Support me. Comment. Let's get this algorithm up. Leave a subscribe. Show this to your family. Play it on Thanksgiving on the big screen. They're going to love it. Smoke one out with your boys or girls. Don't do drugs. Go to the gym. Work on yourself. Love yourself. Forgive yourself. Go with God. Press that subscribe. Hit the bell. Peace and love.